Hi guys, this is Captain Duncan McHammond. Welcome back. In this video we will be covering storylines. The first principle of a good story is its capacity to get the player involved in the story. In Call of Duty, there were 4 storylines across 2 of the major series that I really liked. These stories really engaged the player and gave them a sense of being an integral part of them. They inspired you to want to finish what you started. Specifically, I liked the stories from Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, and Black Ops 1. When you are playing them, these storylines cause you to become involved in the story and work to accomplish the mission objectives. You get to know your team very well. You get emotionally attached to them, and when you see them die in the storyline, your focus immediately narrows to your overwhelming desire, in a sense, obsession, to take the enemy out and finish the mission. A good story clearly defines good and evil, and good triumphs over evil at the end. A successful ending for the good guys is essential to a sense of completion and satisfaction at the end of the play. Developers often get so involved in the art they don't pay as much attention to the flow of the story, which gives you storylines like Call of Duty Ghosts. The storyline of Ghosts leaves you with the unsettled sense of not finishing the mission. Games are now movies. In effect, they are using techniques that are used in movies, refining and honing them. In fact, techniques as developed in video games are picked up by movie makers, refined there, and back and forth it goes. For example, to my knowledge, motion capture techniques originated in video games because it gave a sense of real-life movement. This was picked up by movie makers, and both they and the video game developers are constantly developing and refining them further. The player is definitely an actor in this movie. Voice actors are required to act the story in more than just their voices, and the player must interact with them to move the story forward. This causes a real sense of being involved in the story at a very deep level, and the player becomes invested in the proceedings and the outcome, as well as the characters with whom they interact. There needs to be that definite win to have a reasonable sense of success. The reason I consider this as one of my criteria for whether to buy a game or not is that a multiplayer is all well and good, but the single player is what informs what the multiplayer will look like in terms of factions, weapons, and other considerations. You don't usually buy a game because it has one feature that appeals to you. You buy a game because it has multiple features that you like. It is extremely hard to find a game that has every feature that you like, but it would be nice to have as many of those features as possible. A satisfying story incorporates emotional involvement in the story and characters. A story that describes the human condition that goes beyond just the fighting and the war, but also depicts the events of the lives of the characters and how they affect the actions of the characters. As a warfighter, very often you have an actual family, other than your team family. And the dynamics of your relationships affect your actions on the battlefield and off of it. This kind of thing is shown in Warfighter, with the different perspectives of the wives clearly describes. The internal conflict of being both a family member and a team member is very real world, and is very important to the player's investment in the storyline and performance as a soldier. The examples of storylines I like include both real-world and science fiction scenarios, because both of them can describe the human condition in various ways. I also like story arcs, which increase the sense of involvement and investment in the characters and action. I don't like it when the games take real-world examples of modern weapons, make futuristic modifications, and present them as real. I would prefer that futuristic weapons be purely futuristic, and real-world weapons be presented as they really are. They can be in futuristic games, but not as some futuristic hybrid that might never even be possible in the real world. Or, if they are possible, it would be a long time before the concept could even be realistically tested. An example would be directed energy weapons, which don't make a lot of sense as handheld weapons. Though mounted on spaceships, they could be credible. My recommendations based on my idea of the perfect first-person shooter games would be those real-world or science fiction scenarios as I have previously described. Also, the good old-fashioned good versus evil conflict in which good clearly triumphs over evil is essential to the sense of completion and success. The technological aspects, whether real-world or science fiction, should be useful as well as cool, and be an extension of the player. In conclusion, the game needs to be believable in all aspects in order to foster the kind of involvement and investment that ensures the return of the player to future titles. The story does need to have good content, interesting visuals, details in the environment, and other elements to further the illusion of realism, but not to the detriment of the development of the storyline and story arc. Without a good storyline, the gameplay is just not as enjoyable. If you have any questions or comments about these subjects, please leave them in the comments below. Please make sure your comments are polite and respectful of others. Constructive discussion in which there are differences of opinion is great and beneficial to the gaming community, but contempt for others is not edifying to anyone. Be nice to your poor host as well. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Until next week, this is Captain Duncan McHammond. Hold the line. Be strong and courageous.